Welcome to day 2 on how to create a podcast. Today, I'm going to teach you what kind of logos and covers work for podcasts and how to create a show description that really works and appeals to your ideal listener and potential client. Welcome to Thriving Launch with Luis Congdon and Kamala Chambers, the show for heart-centered entrepreneurs who want it all.
5 days a week, we bring you different segments to inspire you to live a life of freedom. We interview the leading experts in the field of business, health, and love. Be sure to check out Training Tuesdays, where we give you a clear action plan to grow your own business. Maybe you can relate to this. When I was a full-time coach, keep repeating the same things to people over and over and over again, and it got to be kind of draining, and I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing anymore. So what I decided to do was record the things that I had to tell clients over and over and over again, and then I packaged those recordings together and sold them as an online course. If you're interested in creating and selling your own online course, head over to thrivinglaunch.com, and I have a free training for you on how to create and make passive income through your own online course.
Alrighty, welcome to day 2 on how to create a podcast. Today I want to dive in with you and talk about cover art and show description. Why is a show description important? What are some of the things that you should consider when you're describing your show and writing about your show so that when other people read it, it really grabs them and hooks them and makes them want to listen? And then also, what artwork really works, what you should choose for the artwork for your show to really assure that you stand out inside of iTunes or TuneIn FM or Stitcher or SoundCloud or even on other places like YouTube and other places where your podcast is going to be featured. Because when you have a podcast, it can be placed in thousands of places or hundreds of places, really. So there's a lot of places for your podcast to really stand out. And if you do the artwork right and properly, it's really going to create a brand recognition for you. It's going to help you create more authority, stand out and really pop. Do it wrong and people will skip over your show. They're not going to be interested. iTunes isn't going to rank it, and it's just going to be harder for you to really get traction with this medium. Now, if you don't write the description of your show properly, then someone's going to maybe just briefly read the first sentence or two and skip over it, never listen to a fantastic show that can really help them. So let's start diving in. The first thing that I want to talk about is your artwork. A lot of people get really excited about artwork. They put all this time, all this effort. I know people that have spent over $1,000 picking the right artwork. And I know people that have spent zero picking right artwork. And somewhere in between, I've really found the magic spot, because I know some people have used tools like Canva to create their artwork. And most of the time it doesn't look very good. Most of the time it gets skipped over. So one of the first things I want you to do when you're thinking about artwork is I want you to go inside of iTunes and I want you to start looking at all the different podcasts that are out there. So open up iTunes and just start scrolling through the podcast section and start looking at shows and start looking at what pops and doesn't pop. And I'm going to give you a few things to look for. Okay, so large text. Now, a thumbnail is all that's going to appear. So if someone's on their phone and they're scrolling through all the podcasts, it's going to be a very small little image. And so large text on there is going to be better, right? Large text will stand out. Small text is not going to read very well. It's going to be such a small little image that small text just won't really pop out. Too many words aren't going to pop out. So you want to think about large text, bold text, right? So I want you to start scrolling through and I want you to start noticing that. The other thing I want you to notice is that a lot of the big shows, if you look at Tim Ferriss' show, very large text. And I want you to notice something else though too. WTF with Mark Maron, Joe Rogan's show, Jason Stapleton's show. There's a lot of shows I could name off that maybe you've heard of or haven't heard of, but I know that they're very successful shows. And one of the things to notice is a lot of these shows have an image of the host on the cover. And I think it's brilliant. I think it is so brilliant. If you are your brand, if you're a business owner and you are your brand, then it's probably a really good idea. It's a big recommendation from me to make sure to have a good headshot, a good picture of yourself there on the cover of your podcast. It's super important. See, by having that, people will start to notice your face and your brand just because of that thumbnail, right? Every time they go into iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud or TuneIn FM and various other pod feeders, they're going to see your face. Boom. That's an opportunity for them to connect with you, to connect with your brand, to recognize you. And then they go over to Facebook and there's your face again with a video or something else that you're releasing. Then they go into Amazon and you've got your face on a book cover. And then they go over to YouTube and there's your face again in a video. And they go to all these other places and there's your face. There you are. There you are. And that's very important because studies have shown, I don't remember, I wish I could remember who did this study, but essentially what they found was that the more times somebody is hit with a brand or a company, the more trust they have. I don't even need to like quote off who did the study. We all know that companies like Coca-Cola, Nike, Adidas, you name them, they're constantly paying millions and billions of dollars year after year to get their brand in front of your face because they know that by putting their brand in front of you, soon you'll start trusting it. And then you're going shopping and you're like, oh, I want that thing. And you trust it. Now that's all been very calculated. And I want you to use that same intelligence when creating a podcast cover. So put your face on your podcast cover and use as large a text as you possibly can fit on there. And don't get too wrapped up in the rest of the minutia around the color and the font. Like all that stuff is great. You want legible font. You want colors that work and stand out and really pop. So look inside of iTunes and really look at colors that really stand out or colors that not everybody's using so that when you're designing your podcast cover, you're using maybe colors that not everyone else is using. Maybe you're using a font that not everyone is using, but the key thing is that it's legible and a very small size. So, I highly recommend that you scroll through iTunes specifically. And the reason why I'm naming off iTunes is because iTunes is the giant for podcasts. If you want your podcast to get big, put it on iTunes. If you want to keep your podcast small, don't put it on iTunes because something around like 90% of podcast listeners are going to iTunes. So, if you want a large show, that's a huge audience that you have access to inside of iTunes. So make sure that you're scrolling through iTunes and just look at some podcast covers, but make sure that you put your face on the cover and nice big font. And then from there, you can pick what kind of font you want. As long as it's legible, you can pick colors that you like. You can that stuff you can kind of mess up and still be okay as long as you've done the few other things that I've talked about. And now I want to go into one other piece here with you is creating a description for your show. This piece is super important. A lot of people get really hung up on this and I want to make it simple for you. So I want you to think about your avatar. So if you haven't listened to day one on how to create a podcast, I want you to go back, listen to day one, and make sure to listen to that episode on how to create a podcast day one, because in that show, I talk about creating your avatar. Now, if you've already been in business or you know what this is and you've already done this process, fantastic. Think about your avatar. Think about what they like. What is this one particular person or two or three people that you've kind of chosen as your avatar examples? What is this person like? What is this person going to get out of listening to your show? What are some key interviews, phrases, pieces of education, of content, of information? What are some key things that you're going to give this listener that'll make them really want to listen to it, right? So your podcast description, it's short. Doesn't have to be too long. It can be anywhere 200 words, 500 words, but it doesn't have to be very long. But the key thing is like the back of a book. This is your opportunity to tell the person what they're going to get out of it. And not everybody's, really taking at length time to figure this out. They're going to push play and listen to something, but you want to try to create a description that will appeal to them. So for example, with Thriving Launch, we say this is a show that's going to feature people like Jack Canfield, Marianne Williamson, Robert Kiyosaki, and I name off some other people. The key thing there is that by seeing names like Jack Canfield, Marianne Williamson, Byron Katie, and so on, the person that we want to attract knows who Jack Canfield is. If they don't, they know who Marianne Williamson is. If they don't, they know who Robert Kiyosaki is. And all of that says spirituality, business, heart-centered business, mindfulness, coaching, right? So that's all the stuff that we want to kind of include because we're trying to attract the Toms of the world, right? And Tom is a real heart-centered entrepreneur who loves coaching people, who's very motivated, who doesn't just want to listen to a show that only talks about, how to make a sale, but it's a show about how to stay inspired, how to stay motivated, how to make sales, how to automate and generate leads. Tom is somebody who really is interested in becoming the best possible person he can be, so then he can give that back to his clients. And so he's very driven by his business and his desire to become a better person. And they're all kind of meshed into one thing because that's the kind of person Tom is. And I'll be really honest and sincere here with you. That's who I am as well. So Tom and I are very similar. I love listening to shows that offer me an opportunity to learn about how to become a better person, while at the same time teaching me how to become better at sales or enrolling people on my products, services, and how to automate and set up all that stuff online. So I roll that up into one. So business isn't just this thing on the left and then I come home and drop my bags and I don't think about my business anymore. For me, business is a part of who I am. It's a part of my identity. It's a part of what I give to the world through who I am. And so I've created a show for the Toms of the world. There's a female version of Tom as well. And I have her in my head as well. So make sure that you listen to day one on how to create a podcast if you haven't, because I'm going to walk you through that. And also my other tip for you is grab the launch guide. Go over to thrivinglaunch.com, grab the podcast launch guide, and it's going to walk you through this process. And if you already know this stuff, great. You can skip over that. There's some other fill in the blank homework, like the description, like picking your logo. I talk about that. I give you some examples, really dive in with that, because I know that some of you're listening to the show, but you also want to get your hands into it. You want to read about this. You want to have a step-by-step guide, not just listen to it, but have a guide that goes with it. So I've got that there for you at thrivinglaunch.com. Key thing here though, is when you're creating a description, you really want to appeal to your avatar. Some people, they come to me and they've created a description and it has nothing to do with their avatar. And I'm like, wait, so you've created a show about health and fitness, but here you're talking about like comedy and investing and all these different things. Why don't you just say, hey, this is a show for anyone who wants to get really fit, who wants to feel great about their body. And here's some of the things that we're going to talk about, how to lose 10 pounds in 10 days or whatever it might be, so that person who's really into health and fitness goes, yeah, this is the show that I want. So just make sure you know who you're trying to appeal to and then write a short description for them. And hey, I want to give you one more little tip here. You can change the description at any point, right? This isn't make or break. This is important. It's one piece of a big puzzle, but this isn't make or break. You can change it just like you can change your artwork. If you do your artwork and you like it, great. If you ever want to change it, you can do that too. And now if you want to make artwork or have someone make the artwork for you, you can go over to thrivinglaunch.com. We have services around that. You need to actually send us something and we'll take a look at it. And if you qualify, we'll message you back and we can build out all the artwork for you for your podcast. Now, don't do services like Fiverr. Absolutely hate Fiverr for logo creation, podcast cover creation. And the reason why is because we did that once. And then we actually ended up kind of getting stiff. Like later we found out that we had paid $5 or $10 for a cover. But then I was scrolling through Facebook one day and I saw our image and I realized that this was an image that is actually free online, or you pay like $5 for it one time or $10 or whatever it is, you pay for it one time and then you own it. And so the person that we'd paid had this artwork and all he did is he took a little corner of the art and cut out a little square and then gave that back to us as if that was going to be our podcast cover. And it was completely unique to us. And it wasn't. Don't do Fiverr. If you want to go to thrivinglaunch.com and have us design it for you, fantastic. We're not going to be the cheapest. We're not going to be the most expensive, but we're not cheap. But you're also welcome to go to 99 Designs. We'll also have that at thrivinglaunch.com where I have a link so you can go over to 99 Designs. What's cool about that is you pay $99. You write up a little thing about what you want, and then a bunch of people will bid for that job. And whoever wins it gets that $99 or a percentage at $99. But you could have like 500 people bidding to make your artwork, and they have to submit something. And then if you like something, you say, well, I really like this. And then you kind of start up a conversation with that artist. And then you and the artist go back and forth until you've gotten to a point where you're really satisfied and you choose that piece of artwork with them. But once you choose the artist, you have to stick with them. But still, it gives you a really cool opportunity to see a lot of different people bidding for your work and a lot of different examples of how people interpret what you want to have made. So really, honestly, those are my two best choices. Is you have us do it. You find your own personal graphic designer that you really like. Or you go to 99 Designs and you have them design it there. But before you do any of that stuff with artwork, I want you to go to iTunes and look at the artwork. A lot of people miss this, and then they make artwork that doesn't work well, or they pay a graphic designer $500, $700, $800 for artwork, and they don't know how to guide the artist on what they want. So then the artist makes them something, and then it's not what they want, and then it just creates a big headache. But if you go inside of iTunes and you look, you're going to have a lot more clarity around what you want. So you can say, well, I like this one and this one and this one. So when you're talking to a designer, they go, great. Now I know why you like this. Can you tell them a little bit more about that? And then the artist doesn't have to just like create something out of thin air, which they're going to do, but they're not just creating it with some vague, nonsensical idea of what you want. They're going to go, okay, these are some of the things they like, and this is some of the font they like. And then they can put something together that's going to come out really beautiful and really work for you. So those are my tips for creating a podcast cover and how to create a show description that really stands out, makes you pop, and really helps you get those listeners. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure to go over to thrivinglaunch.com and grab the launch guide, and let me walk you through and tune in to next week's episode, where I'm going to teach you how to create a podcast and how to go deeper into that process.
You've been listening to the Thriving Launch podcast. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure to head over to thrivinglaunch.com. We'll see you there. Be sure to tune into the next episode where we do a training with one of our besties, Brandon Lucero. We love this guy. We're going to be talking about building a business online and some pro-level tips on launching products to make some extra money to build your business even bigger. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a rating on iTunes.